did this in my universe, it didn't wipe out the Klingons. A decent number should be able to save themselves. Plus, they'll have an advantage. No Terran ships firing on them as they try to escape. Philippa Georgiou, Terran Empress. Hello there. In today's video we are going to be analysing the Terran invasion of Kronos, the homeworld of the Klingons in the Mirror Universe. Now, unlike a lot of my videos, there isn't a lot of canon on this. There's mostly references made by the Terran Empress that alluded to the invasion, but there have been no references to it in any of the other forays into the Mirror Universe. So some of this information is beta canon, but it's still an interesting story. The Terrans clearly did invade Kronos, although sometimes in my head canon I do wonder if the Mirror Universe encountered in the Discovery timeline is the same Mirror Universe that was encountered by Kirk and Cisco and others, as there are obviously other splinter universes where the Terran Empire would exist, notably the Dark Universe, where the Terran Empire never actually collapsed and continued to expand well into the 24th and 25th centuries. But sticking to what's depicted in the story, a little history on the subject. The Klingons and the Terrans would first encounter one another in the mid-22nd century, just like in the Prime timeline, when a Klingon ship would crash on Earth and its occupants would be injured in a fight with a local Terran farmer. Unlike in the Prime universe, the Terrans were not as interested in simply returning this Klingon to his homeworld and maintaining peace. They wanted to know more about this warrior from a strange race they'd never seen before. The Terrans would torture this man to extract information from him, and using the knowledge of a Denobulan doctor who was stationed on Earth, Dr. Phlox, the Terrans would extract information from him in regards to his people, his mission, his purpose, the location of his homeworld, everything. Learning about this new and aggressive, warlike warrior race pretty much right on their doorstep, the Terrans were understandably concerned that perhaps their borders were being threatened or could potentially be threatened by this dangerous new adversary. This spearheaded the Terrans to develop a new class of battlecruiser, the NX class, a design of ship that had been on the back burner for many years due to the fact that the Terrans were more concerned with putting down local rebellions and keeping control of the territory which they already possessed, rather than concerning themselves greatly with expansionistic policies. But the presence of such a dangerous and powerful civilization so close by required some more forward thinking, and the Terrans pushed forward with the NX program. This explains why in the Mirror Universe this program was also delayed, similar to in the Prime Universe, where it was delayed by 20 years due to political reasons with the Vulcans. In the Terran Universe it was delayed due to budgetary reasons, infighting, and general need to maintain the fleet they had, pump out as many ships as possible to keep the Andorians, the Vulcans, the Denobulans and other races under control, rather than worry so much about races they'd not really encountered yet. First contact would be made proper, to a degree, by the NX-01, the Enterprise, the first of the new class of battlecruisers. This ship's first mission would be to investigate this new race, these Klingons, find out what it could about them. It would encounter a damaged Klingon ship. The Enterprise would offer to render assistance, repairs, and maintenance in exchange for the Klingon swearing fealty to the Terrans. The Klingons, of course, refused this generous offer, and the Terrans would attack, defeating the ship's defenses and capturing the crew. They would then be abandoned on a moon which was barely habitable and await more Terran vessels to come and pick them up, while the Terrans on board the Enterprise continued their mission. By the time the rest of the Terran fleet arrived, the Klingons on the world were broken and enslaved into the Terran Empire. The Enterprise also had considerable time to study the Klingon vessel and its database that they had previously encountered. allowing them to learn about their defenses, offensive capabilities, and much about their technology and ways to penetrate it. This would greatly give the Terrans an advantage in dealing with Klingons in the future, as Klingons knew practically nothing about Terrans, and Terrans were inherently even more aggressive than the Klingons. Combine these two factors, and it's no particular wonder that the Klingons were overwhelmed by the Terran Empire a century after these events. Skipping ahead to the late 22nd century and into the early 23rd century, the Imperial Starfleet had developed a series of new starships and technologies to deal with the growing threats beyond the borders of the Terran Empire, as well as within it. These vessels were faster and more powerful than ships that had come before them, and were more capable of dealing with these threats by being faster, more heavily armed, and more versatile than the vessels that had come before them, to more rapidly intercept any invading force, as well as more rapidly overwhelm the defenses of a world that they happen to be invading. In 2218, the Empire decided that it was time to deal with the Klingons. A single Terran vessel was sent to Kronos, the ISS Ranger. This ship's purpose was to... its mission, should I say, was to try to deal with the Klingon Empire. The ship's captain felt that the Klingons, due to their warrior nature and warlike culture being quite akin to that of the Terrans, would make them valuable members of the Terran Empire. If the Terrans could control the Klingons, they could use them to control many other races by proxy and not have to do as much of the legwork themselves. It would also give them an impressively large army of resilient warriors to be used as cannon fodder in their wars. As a result, the Terran ship would show, for the Terrans, an unprecedented level of mercy to the Klingons. Instead of simply going in, guns blazing, it went in almost diplomatic. Basically telling the Klingons, look what we can build, look what we can do, this is just one ship and we've flown all the way here and you've been able to do nothing to stop us. Why don't you be part of this instead of fight against it? Surrender to us. Become part of the Terran Empire, and you will be given the honoured position of Praetorian Guard within the Empire, which basically meant they were held in a higher esteem. There will be a race which the Terrans will control but this race will be then allowed to control other races in the name of the Terran Empire, rather than the Terrans have to control everyone. So basically the Klingons would be allowed to control, hypothetically, 10 civilizations. The Terrans would only have to control 1. And as long as the Terrans maintain control of the Klingons, the Klingons could do the legwork with the other races. It was a symbiotic relationship to a degree, where the Terrans were the better benefactors, but the Klingons' alternative was conquest or destruction. The Klingons agreed to these terms, but only at face value. They had no intention of sticking to the arrangement. The Klingons deceived the captain of the Ranger, asking for surrender to take place on their terms in a ceremonial ceremony, which they used to trick the Terran crew into lowering their defenses. The Klingons would then capture the ship, kill the Terran crew, and then they would deplete the resources of the Klingon Empire, studying the ship, reverse engineering it, and building copies of it to which they could then use against the Terrans. This tactic, however, completely failed the Klingons, and the inevitable still happened. The Klingons were overwhelmed by the still vastly superior numbers and technological forces of the Terran Empire. Sometime before 2257, Empress Giorgio would detonate a hydro bomb in the caverns underneath Kronos, turning the place into a post-apocalyptic wasteland, while the Terran fleet shot down any Klingon ship that was trying to escape, although they wouldn't get every single one of them. And there it is. The fall of Kronos. The Klingons, the mighty Klingon Empire, laid low before the Terran Empire. Which again does explain why the Klingons were so spiteful towards Terrans in the future during the time of the Alliance after the fall of the Terran Empire. Although it is kind of surprising the Klingons didn't simply wipe them out in revenge. Just as a side note, during the war with the Klingons, during their invasion, the Terrans would take advantage of a interesting side effect that came from the Terrans offering the Klingons a position of Praetorian within the Empire, in that the Andorians became very jealous of such a coveted position within the Empire. And the Terrans basically unleashed the Andorian Imperial Guard on the Klingons and used the jealousy and ferocity of the Andorians, seeing the Klingons as a threat to their prominence within the Empire. They used it as a shock for value to bring the Klingons to bear, and use again the Andorians as cannon fodder in this war against the Klingons, saving many Terran lives at the expense of useless blueskins as the Terrans likely saw them. Just an interesting side note that would have basically been what the Klingons would have been if they'd agreed to join the Empire. Now, the long-term relationship between Terrans and Klingons is for another video. Needless to say, the Klingons wouldn't remain part of the Terran Empire forever, as the Empire would voluntarily dismantle itself. And as I say, that's a video for another time that I might cover soon. But with that said, thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed this video or any others on my channel. Please, if you're really liking them, hit the little bell icon. I'm still not used to asking people to do that. It seems really cretinous. That said, if you would like to, please do. And bye-bye. Now, I didn't think I could really use these in the video, but while I was doing research for this video, I came across a lot of amazing Terran cosplays, and I'm sorry, I don't really know who a lot of these people were, although the three Discovery era ones, I was at that convention. I took some pictures of them myself. Their cosplay was awesome. I just thought I'd share the pictures, even though I can't really use them in any context for anything. I just thought they were awesome and needed to be shared.